They are planning a Muslim revolution in North America. Did you not notice the effigy that they just burned in Iran? The obelisk with the Freemason symbology, the down with America, the down with Donald Trump. This effigy being the same effigy that was burned in 1933 by the Jews when they declared war against Germany. The same effigy that was burned in 2000 at Bohemian Grove by U.S. politicians before declaring war against the Middle East. This information is not meant to make you feel good. I know the way I present things isn't comfortable. Despite my looks, I actually have a pretty decent career in which I travel all over the country. And I've noticed that in rural locations, in Boise, Idaho, in Buffalo, New York, there is a huge surge of Muslim populations. And they don't really bother people because they're, for the most part, very nice people. It's like, Jew, Muslims. I'm not trying to argue against the core tenets of Islam. I'm trying to expose the Jewish influence because it's not really Judaism. These Abrahamic religions all are a four-phased approach to enslave the world. Phase one is Judaism. Conquer, kill everything that won't worship your God. You do it under a false name. You do it under the name of Christianity, but you're not really, and you know that because you're implementing a false system of ideals that you know will be corrupted, but will grow in the direction you want and kick back to your thing the entire time. When it does get to the point of implosion, you let it. And then you allow phase three, Islam, to save the day. Because Judaism is the Alpha, the Old Testament, and Christianity is the Omega, the New Testament. And then Islam is both, but it's not 100% of the truth. It's been altered. The story of Abraham is really the story of Jesus, somebody who's arguing against idol worship and gets kicked out of their community and then resurrected after his rebirth through fire. It's symbolically, it's the same story, but there's an important theme in all of them, an obvious and clear inversion of themes and concepts that we're not willing to address. Chicken or the egg, the female, ladies first. Always, not Adam. Clear inversion all the way down. It would be Eve first. And then Ibrahim is still willing to kill his son. Doesn't matter the details. When something approaches you, the test is to not sacrifice your child. That's the right answer. And all of these point to, sacrifice your child. Phase 4, because Muslims are more easily controlled, is steering them off a cliff, like you saw in China, and then implementing a socialist under the guise of communist state where they can still filter off all of these assets. So the goal is to turn everything into a North Korea. It's just obedient slaves. And then do it all over again under the guise of liberation. They're worshiping their leaders as false gods, not the real God. You see? Details do matter, so let's double check. In 1933, history says they did burn a 27-foot tall effigy of Moloch. Now, when you get to that part of the ceremony, it doesn't look like the same statue that's presented earlier. The golden bull, it doesn't look like the same thing. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if that bull was literally made from gold. FDR had enacted part of his New Deal a few months prior that forced American citizens to sell any excess of gold over $100 that they owned to the government. So the government bought up all the gold as part of taking us off the gold standard incrementally. I wouldn't be surprised if that was actual gold. When you get to 2000, I guess they didn't burn the Moloch. They do a cremation of care and burn a human coffin instead. So I guess, listen, close enough. Those definitely could be and probably are the same statue. It's impossible to tell. The eyes look a little bit different than the one that's burning, but it could just be the pyrotechnics and old lighting, and it doesn't matter. The symbolism is very clear of what this whole thing represents. That's Old Testament Moses getting the 10 Commandments. And when Moses goes to get the 10 Commandments, Aaron can't keep the people under wraps without giving them a false god. He doesn't want to create a false god, but he does anyway. He gathers up their gold, puts it into the fire, and out comes a golden calf that they all worship. The key here to the story is that when Moses returns, he tells his people to slaughter their neighbors. You see what I'm saying? We're all stuck in the middle of the evil elite's game of, is God real? That's what they're doing. They're playing the role of, if Satan was real, if the devil's real, what would he do? They're laying out the breadcrumb trails for you to decide between those, because then the karmic retribution is not on them. They maintain your free will, but lead you in the direction to do the things that would bring God to show his face. They make you believe in Satan. They trick people into doing the things that are described in the Old Testament to see if the Old Testament God will intervene as he described. But we keep saying he won't. It's the wrong description. And it's just this big self-fulfilling prophecy, okay? Like if we just throw the concepts out for a minute and we try to reconstruct real simply, real quickly, you are each the Trinity. We are each the Trinity. We have an angel and a demon, and we get to decide with our free will, okay? And that's how God intervenes, by giving us the discernment to make, and the responsibility to make that decision intrinsically, and not put it fully on, take in evidence and then make the decision yourself. Demons and angels also exist externally and all these kinds of things, but this is all it's a big setup. It's all a game to them. It's Satan's Squid Game. It's trying to figure out which of the next glass panes is the good one, which will hold negative consequences if I jump on it. But they're not brave enough to jump themselves, so they convince other people, hey, buddy, hey, the left one's a good one. No, I know for sure. They told me a long time ago, I got a prophecy, whatever. It's the left one. It's a good one. He jumps. Nothing happens. Okay, cool. Everybody forward. That doesn't mean it was the correct glass. It just means it didn't break yet. Yes, exactly. By my logic, all of these themes are rooted in ancient truths that have been corrupted, manipulated, and hidden over time. That's exactly what I'm saying. The water as purification symbolism that's globally shared. Yeah, there was a global cataclysm, and a flood reset humanity's knowledge. That seems, I don't know if the Noah one was the Younger Dryas, right? Or I think maybe that was an earlier one. Either way, we can split the details later, but then you get to water, wine, and bread. You know what the common theme is there that nobody's talking about? It's fungus, okay? You know what the difference between grape juice and wine is? Fungus. Between leavened and unleavened bread? Fungus. I think it represents wisdom and knowledge and access to this, because it's all rooted in ancient mushroom knowledge. You know, this is McKenna's stone ape theory is probably true, and it's probably contained in here. And I think these stories are, you know, we have archaeological evidence of other types of humans and things that existed. These are probably mislabels on all of these much, much older stories condensed into people living in the Bible for hundreds of years and then reduced to 120 years. But there's a person on record who's lived for, I think, 122 or almost 123 years. So it's like, we're picking a huge disbelief in one or the other. It's like, well, why is nobody saying that they're all wrong? Like, it's all wrong. And then the bull theme, the sacrificing of the bull, the sacrificing of children to the bull, the golden calf, it represents a whole lot of different things all at the same time. It represents worshiping a male adult over a female child. Like, the most vulnerable of our community should be the one that we worry about the most, where our kids are a burden these days. That's, you know, we're feeding them into the system, but it also represents the domestication, essentially, of humanity through blood sport. You know, instead of gladiators fighting and killing each other, human on human, gladiators could fight animals for entertainment. And that was a step in a positive direction. But you couldn't just get people to not have gladiators first. You couldn't just unite them over unicorns and rainbows. You had to make it nasty. So it's all some sick, effed up lesson that spiraled out of control to teach us discernment. And yeah, it's, you know, like I said, parallels beyond broad archetypes. They sacrificed a red heifer for the first time in 2,000 years. The slaying of the bull goes back to Mithraism, to Zoroastrianism, to Gilgamesh, and the heavenly bull being used as a weapon. A bull effigy was just burned in Iran like 2 weeks ago in the same ceremony that took place in 1933 in Chicago. Very similar to the one that took place in 2000 in California for Bohemian Grove, all before wars. Albert Pike in the connection to the wars. The Illuminati symbology all over everything. The Freemason symbology all over everything. The stories being steered in the same directions by Freemasons. The author of Mary Had a Little Lamb, Sarah Joseph Hale, looking like a man, and was openly supported by the Freemasons. Charlie Kirk, JFK, 9/11, MK Ultra, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, Napoleon, the French Revolution. Yeah, I'd say there's some parallels. God knows your heart. Doesn't have to test you like a jealous girlfriend. Now, you're really good at using scripture to support your opinion, but arguing over interpretations is the snake eating its tail. It's an endless cycle. You can use the scripture to support whatever opinions you want. You can use different interpretations to support whatever opinions you want. I'm a process engineer by trade. I analyze data of different teams' performance and compare them to make improvements, okay? And I could take a data set and make it say whatever you want. I can take the worst team and make them look like the best. It doesn't matter. You can interpret it a million different ways. We saw the same thing with the COVID shot. We saw the same thing over and over and over again. It's the same thing. Now, let me ask you this. Did the Jew kill the kid? Did the Jew kill the son? There were no Christians. There were no Muslims. They didn't call themselves Jews. I really don't care what they called themselves. Do we believe the story that they gave us that says that they didn't kill the kid? Do we believe that the blood libel is just rumors? We're missing the whole point of the story anyway. This isn't God testing Abraham. This is Abraham testing God. This is man testing God and saying, if God is real, as described, God will intervene and save this child. So when I go to do the act, God will send something to intervene. So only that child? He did for that child? No, he did save Isaac, but not all the other kids, not the kids in the Epstein files, not the kids in war zones, not the kids in those. No, we're not. No, in fact, God of the Old Testament orders babies ripped out of stomach, orders people to kill each other, just awful things. You know, even little Nicky defeats evil with rainbows and KFC. Release the good. Jews, Gentiles, and Roseanne Barr. Really all you need to know about to solve this whole mystery. You know, Mormons used to call non-Mormons Gentiles. They were persecuted and forced to move about to different areas until the state gave them some land on which they could establish a community free from the persecution. And the Book of Mormon is said to have been written around the 4th century CE in an ancient Hebrew-like Egyptian. Hebrew-like Egyptian, because of all the Hebrew verbiage that Joseph Smith uses. That's according to BYU websites and resources. And that steps on the mainstream timeline of languages in North America by, I think, more than 1,000 years. The tablets are found in upstate New York in the 1800s and translated, and it's kind of a familiar play. And Roseanne says she made a deal with the demon, and she openly admits her working class family was really Jewish faking Mormon, that they would be Jewish 6 days a week and Mormon on one. You think that's isolated? She wasn't in the elite class then. How does this happen? Not just why, but how? When does that start? Is this an invasion? It's not. It's not a takeover. What you're seeing is evolutions. Did you know we can credit much of modern philosophy and physics to a visit in a dream from the spirit of truth? Rene Descartes, as in Cartesian coordinate system, as in I think therefore I am, sounds a lot like I am what I am. He was visited by, he doesn't call it the spirit of truth, he doesn't give a name to the entity, but he describes an entity that visited him, basically told him he's doing a good job questioning the norms. And he went to Jesuit school when he was younger too, by the way, a little detail in there. But he was a rabble rouser. He's going against societal norms, thinking outside the box, and they're not really digging it. But he gets this visit that kind of confirms for him, hey, you're going in the right direction. Keep questioning. Why can that not be Jesus? That seems to fit the theme. You know, after the resurrection, his followers don't recognize him. Jesus tells you before he dies, he's going to send the spirit of truth. Like, why does it have to be a physical person? And it probably feels like a meaningless distinction, you know, a believe whatever you want type of deal. But it's really super duper important, because if Jesus was as described biblically, then they killed the Son of God. Is no one else safe? You get what I'm saying? They killed the Son of God, and then we drink the blood and eat the body, and the bread symbolized knowledge. He broke his knowledge into disciplines and had the disciples go out and teach people. So that's bad. And that's where I get to, if I play the if I were Satan game, I would come up with the Jews to do that. Correct. If an entity approaches you and offers you gold, kingdom, riches, whatever you desire, if just willing to give up whatever's most precious, your soul, worship me as God, your child, don't do it. It's a trap. It's the same stories over and over again. It's Rumpelstiltskin. It's Abraham. Abraham asked to sacrifice Isaac, and we're supposed to use discernment and say, okay, we have an entity approaching Abraham and asking him to do this. In return, he will be rewarded. What is that? That's not God. God wouldn't do that. That's Satan. Again, not as an individual entity, not as Lucifer, but as in the devil's advocate. If Abraham understood the concepts there, he would know that God knows his faith, his heart, and wouldn't make the deal. Islam has a little bit different version. Fast forward to when Abraham actually goes to kill his son Isaac and an angel of the Lord intervenes. See, I think that's Jesus. That angels are real. Guardian angels, different levels probably, and Jesus being a higher level, maybe guardian angel, maybe keeper of the guardian angel, whatever. Something of those, because in all of these, with the Rumpelstiltskin story too, you got to learn their name, and that's the power. Learn their name, and then you can control them. They don't care about names. Names are human things. Time is human things. They don't care about human things. They care. It's bigger than that. The synagogue of Satan is literally Satan, because Satan is not an individual entity. Satan is not a single person. It's not the devil. Lucifer is a different thing. Fallen angel is a different thing than Old Testament and Judaism. Satan, Ha-Satan. It's a role, an accusatory, a knowledge check. Someone who makes sure you're not just reading the words, but it's a comprehension check. Can you apply the knowledge that you've gotten? And what the synagogue is if Satan was real, this is what he would do. He would bring God to life. He would kill God. He would make you drink his blood and do all that kind of stuff, like weird shit like that. So it's literal. No religion is the correct religion. Religion is belief. And if you know, it's different. It's like when you're a kid and you're writing an essay in the first person. You keep saying, I think this, I think that. And the teacher says, you don't have to say, I think. Just say it. I think is already implied. I believe is already implied. See, I'm a man of science, okay? And after spending more than a decade studying quantum mechanics and relativity and a few years of engineering school, I believe the empirical evidence points to us all being one and being part of God. Like, if we looked at angels and we said, okay, angels, seraphim, jinn, demons, like there's other entities and we're going to study these entities. Is that a religion? No, that's just science and knowing. Oh, gnosis? Is that what? No. Gnosticism is a religion. Gnosticism is a set prescribed ideals that are a box that you get trapped into. It's none of that. It's study everything. Try to understand everything. What should I do? Define should. Literally. That's step number one. This is where I started years ago. I said, okay, I don't know. What should I do? How do I figure it out? Okay, well, what does should mean? You're going to have to define good and bad. And you'll find in trying to find these definitions that they're relative terms. They're 2 points on the same line, all right? 32 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 degrees Celsius. Does 0 degrees Celsius mean that there's no temperature? No, it's a relative term. It's the same thing with good and bad. It doesn't mean that we can't say things are evil. When we say they're evil, we can agree that they're objectively harmful for humans overall. But how do we define that? What's our end goal? What's the total purpose? I think it's happy. Happiness hours, literally. Like when you get into it and you frame it like that, how do I maximize total human happiness hours? How do I maximize human happiness hours for my child or for me? And then make that decision. And when you really have to boil it down, I just like to think about it like, okay, if my kid were right here, what would I want them to do? Isn't worship love and love sacrifice? No, they're distinct terms with distinct concepts and distinct definitions, but it's a great question. It speaks to the core of good and bad, evil and suffering. Worship is defined as reverence or adoration towards a deity, specifically towards a deity. So when we say we worship the ground that is walked on, we are making the earth a deity. Love is an internal feeling of affection. It's subjective. You can't technically give love. You could express love or try to inspire love, but it's a you thing. Sacrifice, it means ritualistic slaughter of animals. Like that's the original definition. It comes from words that mean make holy. And we use it today as kind of a something bad for me, but good for you and better for the whole overall. But we don't have those concepts defined at all. That's what I'm saying. We are so far off on what good and bad mean to different people, on what sacrifice to one is good to the other, you know. Is the lion bad to the gazelle? Yeah, but is the lion evil? No. And evil doesn't have to exist, like I keep hearing it. Like, well, you have to have evil. You have to have No. It doesn't. Suffering is not evil. You can go for a nice long hike up a mountain. That's suffering. That's not evil. When you get to, you gotta sacrifice animals. Like, I could understand if these were ceremonies to honor the animal before we had to sacrifice its life for us to be able to continue. That the greater good for humanity, the greater good for my children, is to end this animal's life, and I'm going to honor it. But that's not at all what it is. They just burn them up. So that means you're feeding something else. Like Jerusalem of Argentina, Moises VA, Mosesville, established in 1889 by Baron Maurice de Hirsch for, you guessed it, Jews escaping persecution. From where this time? Does it really matter? It's the same thing over and over again. It was the Russian Empire, and who was persecuting them? The Orthodox Christian Church. And what was the religion of the place they fled to? Roman Catholic. It gets the same over and over again. They persecute their people to make you have a reason to let them in, and then, but they're all working hand in hand the whole time. Word goy or goyim is super important because it demonstrates a repeated pattern of behavior and exposes exactly how they manipulate ideas. They introduce new definitions with additional layers of context that are plausible, maybe true, maybe not, but keeps us arguing over these definitions rather than the idea and the original concept itself. So when they call you goy, it is an insult, but that's not what the word originally meant. The word originally meant nations, is used in the Christian Bible to describe descendants of Noah, and is also used again for Abraham. When Abraham is 99 years old, God changes his name from Avram to Avraham and is described as Avhamon Goyim. We want to argue over the Goyim part. That's where we're getting poked left so we don't look right. Hamon is the important part. Now that word, it can be translated into English as multitude or many. That's a valid translation. So is Talmud, not Talmud, Talmud. That's an English word that's more familiar as tumultuous, but that is also a valid translation. So it depends on the context. And again, see how they manipulate the context so that you draw your own false conclusion. It's not the text that's the problem. It's all the additional layer. You see the same pattern in physics. Einstein's 1905 paper is not how we read it today. And this alteration comes with the Sagnac effect in 1913. GPS, everybody always goes, oh, GPS satellites, like how do they work? Well, it's a misrepresentation of the properties described in special relativity in the framework, really, of an etheric model. I mean, that's at the end of the day what it is, because it's all about mirrors moving and bouncing light, blah, blah, blah. Same pattern. And also a bunch of phonetic connections to Hamon and ancient kings and different things there too. A lot of layers. I'm not saying I'm giving you the furthest one back. I'm just saying we need to, do you really think we have a worship gene that can be flipped on and off? It feels like a misdirect, to be honest with you. It feels like a substitution for the need for community, and that's at the underlying core of the issue, and that it's a distraction to, again, same old notion, keep you in prescribed thought ideologies and just within contextual definitions and whatever. You know what I mean? You can teach an old dog new tricks if the old dog wants to learn new tricks. Hello, do you want to play a game? Saul's game? Saul's game? Paul's game. Every piece has its puzzle. That's savvy. Hit me up and we'll schedule a time I'm going on live and you can join me. That's all I want to do, is have conversations. I'd rather talk to people than just sit here and lecture by myself. That was the thing, is like I couldn't find people to talk to. I tried to talk to people in real life first and nobody wants to talk about this stuff. Thought it was kind of important, so started posting my thoughts. But to be honest with you, I'm kind of a moody little bitch. That's the hard part sometimes. Like, I don't really feel like talking to people a lot of times. I'm not this isn't a, I feel good, do this, and you'll feel good too type of page. It's like I feel like shit and we need to fix this. You know what I mean? I'm barely hanging on by a thread out here too, guys. We need to try to, anyway, but that's, I started doing that. I posted on YouTube, Eddie Enigma's mystery show, Big Shoes 369. You can find it. Some of the conversations that I started doing. I'm not sure if he wants to say who, but one of you guys is helping me to try to set up like a booking site so I can schedule, like, all right, I'll go live Tuesday at 6:30 and whoever can just jump in with me and talk about whatever. You could present your own thing. You could lecture on the platform. I don't care. That was the point, is have a place to be able to talk.